Welcome to Outside the Box Belfast. I'm Obsesse, and our channel brings you the best in local talent, music and arts, and also some fascinating stories here in Northern Ireland. Liam Cray went to chat to two people who have a fascination for the US military, and they've uncovered something quite extraordinary. Liam picks up the story.
Few people know this forgotten airfield to the northwest of Belfast in Northern Ireland, or its derelict observation air control tower designed by a Californian to guide in US bombers for repair, or the 1,000 acres of flat ground known 80 years ago as Lockheed City, home to 6,200 US military personnel and local civilians. Or the state-of-the-art hospital with glazed-roofed operating theatres, ball fields, bowling alleys, rifle range, housing, ice cream making plant, radio station, newspaper, and of course the gigantic hangars which serviced gigantic American bombers taking part in World War II. But these two know it well. Meet Will Lindsay and Alfie Montgomery. Will has been fascinated by all things US Army Air Forces in Northern Ireland since he was a boy.
So this documentation that you've unearthed?
It was coming up to Christmas, and with this newfound enthusiasm for the Second World War in the locality, I asked my mother and father for Christmas, could I have an aircraft accident report and a metal detector? So Christmas came, they both arrived. Christmas morning, I was away down to the field when everyone else was opening their presents, having a good time. I was down a grassy, cold field, scanning away. One day I get a bleep on the detector. I dig the ground up, and there's a piece of aluminium, and it had a part number on it. So I contacted this man in the States who gave me the crash report. He said, oh yes, well that's from a P-38 Lightning, and this is the part where it came from, so that was me hooked.
His friend Alfie has the same passion. Note their favoured mode of transport.
I was interested in history from being at primary school. I used to walk with my father in Airfield every Sunday morning. Father pointed out to me that an American B-17 Flying Fortress had crashed there during the Second World War.
The pair spent many days hunting for pieces of US aircraft parts discarded after the war on the edge of Lough Neagh, just a few hundred yards from the hangars, runways and workshops at the base.
Oh, part of World War II.
Oh, look at that.
They're mine. That's all aircraft. That's thick plexiglass. That's been out of a window or something, probably.
They have found many pieces, and from serial numbers they have been able to detect which type of plane the pieces are from, and in some cases trace the war record of that particular plane.
Oh, here, look at this. Come on.
This aluminium pipe has been joined with a compression joint.
They are most interested, though, in an American bomber crash in Belfast almost 80 years ago. They visit the site frequently.
I find that there's another bit of control cable with a bit of bracket or something.
It's not in good shape, is it?
No, it's not. It's strange as well the way we call aluminium and the Americans call it aluminum.
It's glass. Wow.
What you got? A coin?
No, I thought it was a coin. It's a key.
Key? I think it's a a key in a lock, or do you think it's one of those, you know, some of the aircraft with the Jubilee clips that you tighten with like a thumb screw?
It's hard to tell because the key is still in the lock. Look, you see the cylinders.
I see the cylinders, yeah. That must have been out of something that's obviously perished or burnt, like a leather briefcase or something, document case.
Aye.
And it's you're just a few feet from below where I found the ring back in '93.
And finding that ring in 1993 changed Alfie's life forever.
I found 2 or 3 small fragments, put them into my pocket, I washed them under the water tap that evening, and as soon as I held one of the objects under the water tap, soil all disappeared from it, and it left a pear-shaped metal object, which I thought was a hydraulic fitting, a pipe olive. It turned out the more I ran it under the water tap, it actually started to twinkle gold, and I realised then it was an item of jewellery. So I didn't immediately know it was off the aircraft. Started then to look for a hallmark on the inside of it to try and identify if it was British or if it was by any chance American. And lo and behold, found 2 names, Ruth and Larry, and a wedding date written the American way with the month before the day on the inside of it inscribed. Went and got my crew list out, and of course nothing's easy. There were 2 Lawrences on board the aircraft, which meant I had 2 Lawrences to try and find which one had a wife called Ruth.
Alfie made it his mission to return the ring. His efforts and success in tracking down the widow of the airman who had been wearing the ring at the time of the crash have been made into a Hollywood movie.
They told me she wouldn't have the same address. Not after 50 years, but I thought I'd try anyway. Are you there?
What do you want?
I have something belonging to you. Well, I think it belongs to you. It's a ring. A gold ring. It's got names on the inside.
A ring?
Yeah.
This is the station history for the Air Transport Command who were at Nuts Corner. Now it goes from, I think, the dates of June 43.
Will and Alfie's passion for details about US aircraft and their movements led to them uncovering the station history for the former American airfield known as USAAF Nuts Corner.
Here is July, so there's about 20-30 pages for July. Now here's June. What
1 page.
1 page.
So June.
This history contained a number of confidential communications flagging up safety concerns about American aircraft movements at Nuts Corner. This was before the major Belfast crash involving the enormous B-17 Flying Fortress with 10 crewmen on board. They also made a disturbing discovery.
Of June is missing from that report, and if you look at all the other months within that report, they are very detailed, 30 to 40 pages at least per month. June has been omitted from the record.
This find may well link the British RAF and the US Army Air Forces to what looks like a conspiracy to hush up what happened to a B-17 bomber fresh in from the United States and the 10 young men who perished in it.
There was a lack of cooperation between the British and the Americans. And I think that was more on the British part. They would not allow American controllers to bring in American aircraft. Now, there was issues with the crews of American aircraft not being able to understand the British diction, the accent, or the procedures they were being asked to carry out, because the procedures which the British would use were slightly different to what the Americans had been trained. Reports from pilots landing at the station indicate great difficulty in receiving landing instructions from present tower because of language, accent and the system used. So, you know, what would that tell you? You know, there's a big issue here between communication.
The fact that that's...
We have a statement which reads from another aircrew member who was in one of those 15 aircraft. He states that the controller got confused and he was unable to get any of the 15 aircraft down. Now that's written by him. Now, if you look into the official declassified reports we have, that ties in with some of those statements I marked out in red. It's all starting to come together.
And that was concern about incoming transatlantic aircraft, and that was, what, 3 months before the Cape Hill crash?
On the morning of June the 1st, 1944, 16 US bombers, having travelled for over 8 hours across the Atlantic, were ordered to fly on the Nuts Corner radio range in a holding pattern which would take them over Lough Neagh and close to the city of Belfast. Each aircraft was stacked at a different altitude from 600 feet to 1500 feet by flying control personnel in the tower at Nuts Corner, each waiting their turn to land.
The controller became so confused that he was unable to get any of them down, and they were just flying constantly in a loop on the radio range.
B-17G Army Serial Number 2, 97862, with 10 young American airmen on board, was flying at just 600 feet above sea level at the bottom of the stack of the 16 aircraft.
It would have been quite difficult to see, I think, you know.
It had been a misty day and the mountain was not visible to the two pilots. The only explanation for flying straight into the mountain was that they thought they were coming out of the holding pattern and making a straight line to Nuts Corner on the edge of Loch Ney, where they were ordered to land.
10 young men on board an aircraft from the US, very close to landing. To be honest, it shouldn't have happened. Accidents like this did happen.
Will and Alfie are writing their second book investigating what exactly happened to the bomber. They visit the site of the crash regularly.
Although these men were fighting in the Second World War, they died just 5 days before the Normandy landings of D-Day, and unfortunately that made the news then. An incident like this, 10 men killed on Cave Hill. Although it was tragic, Belfast lost 3,200 people in 2 nights of bombing in 1941.
While we were filming them on the hill in July 2021, Will found 2 items. The 2 men brought them to Will's home, where his little garage houses his Willie's Jeep,
Look what we have.
and is also the temporary home of a museum featuring the US military in Northern Ireland during the Second World War. Will and Alfie gently clean the small metal pieces. One is a footlocker key, presumably belonging to one of the men, and the other, a little scrap of metal.
What do you think?
It turns out to be a regimental badge from a US medical detachment.
We're in touch with the majority of the crew's family, so we find out who it belongs to, we'll send it back. It'll be the right thing to do.
On investigation later that day, Will quickly found it belonged to Lawrence McGrain, who had previously been assigned to the 105th Field Artillery Medical Detachment. He immediately contacted Lawrence's nephew, who told him to keep it in his collection in Northern Ireland for the time being. Almost 80 years on, these 10 men are not forgotten by their extended families in the United States, or by 2 young brothers whose home was almost hit by the bomber as it smashed into the hill just a few hundred yards away.
There was a tremendous roar that went over the house. After a while, there was a bit of silence, and suddenly there was a tremendous explosion. And when I said there was an explosion, there was an explosion.
And what I do remember was the smell of the pine trees where they had been burning. You could smell that. It was a very strong smell.
I saw the plane literally in flames, with the bullets were, you know, the noise with the bullets, and you saw the flames going up in the air.
Well, there were stretchers that were kept up our driveway there. So what I would gather, what would have happened up where the ground, where the crash site, it was rough ground and that, they would have stretched them down to whatever vehicles, the American vehicles, whatever you call them, got as far as they could get up there.
If I was to go up the woods by myself to that crash, I would feel emotional. Something there.
So how did a brand new and hugely expensive and technical advanced aircraft with 10 young men on board crash into a mountain at full speed and with apparently no warning? Will and Alfie suspect these 10 lives may well have been lost through intransigence, pig-headedness and petty jealousies between senior British and US officers on the ground who were not cooperating as well as they should have been. They perhaps covered up the circumstances which led to the crash to avoid a fallout between Britain and America as they combined forces to defeat Hitler, or to paste over the cracks in what was best portrayed as a fully united front between the Allies, which would end the war in victory in less than a year. Will we ever know? Perhaps not, but these 2 men are continuing to put the pieces together in a a story which will engross him for many years to come.